Have you been looking for the secret to success? That one thing that will make the difference so that you could go on to live a fulfilling life, a life of where the achievers live. What's that one thing? And maybe you've attended the courses and you've read the books, you've looked through or listened to the podcast, and still that elusive one thing is missing, or you haven't been able to find it yet. And that can lead to a lot of frustration. Well, I've been in personal development long enough to know that there is not one thing. And if there is a secret, it's about understanding that it's all hidden in plain sight, the place that most people won't even look. And so we'll explore, though there is not one thing, there is something in particular that high achievers do that you can begin to apply and have it lead to a more fulfilling life for you. Let's grow. Here's the thing. What gets sold is the idea that there's one elusive thing or one secret to having the life of your dreams, to having fulfillment, to having a life that is filled with meaning and joy and the lifestyle that you want. And that's false. That's fantasy. That does not really exist. In fact, I see or view success as an emergence of things, not just one thing. But there is a particular quality, a trait, an attribute that high achievers seem to possess more so than other people. And it's kind of rooted in this idea of what's the frame, or how you frame events and circumstances and experiences, particularly what might be viewed as negative, but I'll use the word adverse or challenges. How you frame those seems to be a one quality that high achievers have that most are not at least privy to, that we don't understand perhaps the importance of. There is a principle of relativity, and it works this way. This law of relativity, or principle of relativity, essentially says that nothing is either good or bad, right or wrong, short or tall, big or small, positive or negative, until we relate it to something else. So think relativity. Until we relate it to something else, everything just is. So tall is not tall until we relate it to something that we deem or judge as short. Good is not good until we relate it to something that we deem as bad, or vice versa. Does that make sense? So until we relate it to something else, everything just is. This also applies to the events and the experiences of our lives, where they are not positive or negative until we relate them to something else. Events themselves being neutral, meaning they're not positive or negative, they just are. It's like just what is. So a relationship, not positive or negative until we relate it or compare it to something else. Your results are not good or bad until you relate them to something else, okay? And the challenge is that oftentimes we relate ourselves unfavorably. Perhaps that's the human experience or human condition. We're comparing ourselves to other people when in essence, you only have the responsibility of being better than you were on yesterday. What if you consider that? Right? If you only compared yourself to improvement on or less improvement, okay? But you're only comparing yourself to yourself. Be better today than you were on yesterday, and that could lead to a very fulfilling life. But because we tend to relate ourselves unfavorably, we look at other people's results, we look at other people's marriages, other people's relationships, other people's bodies, other people's bank accounts, and we use that to relate unfavorably to our own results. And this leads to feelings of resentment, and then that becomes a spiral through the law of vibration and so forth. That's a different podcast episode. But one of the things that high achievers seem to do more frequently, more regularly, more habitually than others is they relate themselves in ways that push them or move them forward. Does that make sense? So what we know to be true is that no one gets to skip adversity class. No one gets to skip challenges, obstacles, setbacks. That's going to happen for everyone. In fact, searching for a life where there is no adversity, where there is no challenge, where there is no hurdle, where there is no obstacle, searching for a life such as that is actually fantasy. And it's a reason why you never reach it. It's a reason why you don't get there. Okay. It's because it does not exist. It's like building towards a place that does not exist. So the challenge, the adversity, it visits everybody. Everyone is going to experience that. And so the quality, the key, the characteristic is for you to be more resilient. And so as it relates to resilience, there is what's called your explanatory style. Okay. Your explanatory style is the key to building resilience that allows you to bounce back quicker and with more clarity from things that make other people quit. And when I mentioned earlier, it's the power of the frame, okay? The power of how you frame it, of the narrative, of the story that you give it. So when challenge and adversity comes, how do you tell the story to yourself about what has happened or occurred? It turns out that this is extremely powerful for you being resilient and able to bounce back. And your explanatory style really comes down to 3 P's. And these P's it's a very simple framework, very powerful framework developed by Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, okay? The University of Pennsylvania, and the 3 P's of explanatory style. The research shows, the science shows that your explanatory style, how the narrative that you give to yourself when adversity and challenge hits, is one of the keys to a fulfilling life and for you to be more resilient, bouncing back from adversity and challenge. The first P is personal. What we know to be true is that high achievers don't take obstacles and adversity personally. They don't internalize it such that, a negative thing happens, or what we'll call loosely a bad thing happens. They don't take it personal. They recognize that adversity and challenge visits everyone. And perhaps today, this week, this month, it was their turn. But they also know that that tide will turn back in their favor. Whereas those with low resilience internalize it. They feel or believe that a negative happening in their life is some unpaid karmic debt. How ridiculous is that? Right? So we see that when something quote unquote bad happens, then because we're not able to explain what it is, or we don't have real intelligence around it, we'll throw things around loosely, like, that's karmic debt being repaid. Okay. And I recognize that some have that viewpoint. I just don't find any evidence of that actually being true. Okay. So, and not to be right or wrong for you or for me, but I don't find evidence of that being true. What I know to be true is that adversity and challenge visits everyone, even the sweetest of the sweet, the most loving of the loving, okay, have adversity and challenge, okay? And no one gets to skip adversity class. And so knowing that, one of the things that you can begin to implement is when difficulty visits you, don't take it personal. That's the first P. The second P is pervasiveness, meaning its spread, its ability or capability of it spreading. So what we know to be true about those who are highly resilient is that they don't let adversity and challenge spread to other areas of their life. For example, a bad day at work for them doesn't mean that I'm absent or not present with my partner, or I don't spend time with my children, or I don't do the other things that I said I was going to do because I had a bad day at work. There are those who a bad day at work ruins an entire week. Okay. A bad day at work could mean that I don't spend time with my partner. A bad day at work could mean that I don't keep my promise to my children. Does that make sense? So, a negative here starts to spread to other areas that had nothing to do with or wasn't even tied or linked to the challenge or adversity that was visited in another area. So we want to have the ability to compartmentalize. We want to keep it, the term for it is local. We want to only have it, the adversity and challenge, only have it apply to the area where the challenge was experienced. Does that make sense? Versus letting it spread. So highly resilient people, when it comes to how they frame their explanatory style, they don't take it personal, right? They don't allow it to be pervasive. Instead, they keep it local. And then the third P is permanence. And permanence speaks to how long it will last. How long is it going to be here? So highly resilient people see adversity and challenge as something that is just a bump in the road. It's only temporary, okay? This too will pass, or this too shall pass. That's a great phrase to have in your back pocket whenever adversity and challenge comes, is this too shall pass. Whereas those lower on the resilient scale, they see adversity and challenge as something that's going to always be with them. It's going to always be this way. Like, why get excited? Why get pumped up? Every time I get excited, every time I get pumped up, this happens. It always happens this way. Every time I'm excited. So therefore, this is the way it's always going to be. Notice how they associate the time component to adversity and challenge. And then notice that for yourself. When adversity and challenge comes, is your internal dialogue, is your internal conversation one of, this is how it always is, this is the way it will always be? Or do you see it as something that is only a bump in the road and, it'll be over soon, this too shall pass? So your explanatory style, so breaking down the explanatory, how you explain to yourself, okay? Not justifications to other people, but, if they ask, you let them know that I don't take it personal, and this is just for the time being, and not every area where I'm failing. There are a lot of areas where I'm achieving. So it can be to other people, but particularly to yourself and your internal dialogue. It turns out your explanatory style is very, very powerful and influential as it relates to you bouncing back from challenge and adversity and moving beyond and into the place that you believe that you're capable of being, okay? So remember, the principle of relativity. Nothing is either good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative, until we relate it to something else. And so often, because we relate ourselves unfavorably, this turns into resentment. So we want to be careful with that. We want to be mindful of that. Don't do that, okay? Don't relate yourself unfavorably. If anything, relate yourself favorably. Adversity and challenge is going to come to everybody. It doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. It doesn't mean that you've done something bad because you find yourself challenged. That's not what that means. It could mean that you've been asking for something that it's time for you to transform into. Consider that. You see that reframe? So when adversity and challenge visits me, I look to, okay, what have I been asking for? What's the dream that I've been, deliberating on? What is it that I want? And is this challenge a test for me to grow into the person I must be in order to sustain it when I get it? Like, why get it if you're going to lose it immediately? Build the resilience, build the mindset necessary in order for you to be able to keep and maintain it. Okay? So, how you relate yourself, very, very important. And when it comes to adversity and challenge, remember the 3 Ps: personal, pervasive, and permanence. Personal, don't take it personal. Okay? It visits everybody. Pervasive, we don't let it spread. We keep it local. Permanence, it's not here forever. It's only temporary. If you'll apply that, then when adversity and challenge comes, you will find yourself bouncing back faster and with greater clarity from things that cause other people to quit. It can become your competitive advantage, be it in business, with your health, in your relationships, in the pursuit of your divine purpose. I hope that helps. And if it does, don't keep it a secret. Let someone know that this podcast does exist. And I would love for you to join my email list at courtlandwarren.com/opt-in. courtlandwarren.com/opt-in. And there you'll get news and announcements about upcoming courses, events. And I promise to only share if I believe that it will be valuable to you. We'll see you next time.